to highlight some particular aspects of the New Zealand-Malaysia Free Trade Agreement in these committee stages, Mr. Chair. Last night and again this morning we have spent time talking about the general impact of this free trade agreement on the New Zealand economy, with some reference to specific sectors. And I want to continue some of the analysis of the specific sectors and then talk a little bit more about some of the additional provisions that are contained in this free trade agreement. Mr. Chair, I spoke last night about kiwi fruit in particular, but also our other primary products, which will benefit immediately that this free trade agreement is passed and ratified by this Parliament. So last night I spoke about kiwi fruit in particular, which is going to benefit by some millions of dollars immediately on implementation of this agreement, but also our meat, wool, dairy, fish and forestry products. But today I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the manufactured goods that are going to benefit from this free trade agreement and give some numbers. As we know, the tariff reductions follow a progressive sliding scale over a period of time through to 2016, when all but 0.5% of tariffs on our exports will have been reduced to zero. And this is an improvement not only in speed on the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, but also in absolute numbers. So, for example, steel, as one of our manufactured products, and that industry in particular, currently bears a 50% tariff on exports into Malaysia. A 50% tariff is a very high charge. And by 2016, at the latest, that will be eliminated. That will be eliminated. Under the ASEAN agreement, if I remember correctly, there will be still some residual tariff applying, some 10% I think, on steel products. But into Malaysia, it goes to zero. Similarly, paints and varnishes. Now, we often hear about kiwi fruit, or we hear about dairy produce, or we hear about meat and wool and so on, and all of those primary products at which we excel in New Zealand. But here we have a relatively small proportion of our exports into Malaysia, which currently carry a 25% tariff. Now that will be eliminated by 2016. And another area is plastic products. Currently, plastic products out of New Zealand bear a 30% tariff into Malaysia. Again, a huge expense and something that really places obstacles in front of New Zealand plastics industry as they look to increase their exports. But these, in the case of plastic products, Mr. Chairman, these tariffs are eliminated in 2012. So that is a very short order. We're at 2010 now. Within 2 years there will be no tariffs on our plastic products going into Malaysia. And so these are the gains for profits from our manufactured goods as well as our primary produce. So these are very tangible gains, and these achievements in this free trade agreement actually mean more profit remaining in New Zealand. But there are some other features also that I'd like to draw attention to. I may come back to this one a little bit later in this part of the debate, Mr. Chair, but the rules of origin in this, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Marion Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The rules of origin in this Malaysian free trade agreement are in fact the most liberal, as I understand it, of any free trade agreement. And that is a cause of some celebration or congratulations to the officials who have worked in this area, because rules of origin have often been a complex and difficult area to arrive at agreement on, and I congratulate the Minister and the officials in achieving a very liberal rules of origin regime. But I want to go to another thing that's very important. Mr. Chair, members of the government and the National Party like to cast the Labour Party as people who know nothing about business, who do not understand that the contribution that business makes to the New Zealand economy. Well, they may like to live in that outdated and outmoded perception of the Labour Party, but we're busy forging ahead, and I would say that Phil Goff's record in promoting and sealing and initiating free trade agreements recognises and demonstrates absolutely that the Labour Party understands fully the contribution of the business sector to the New Zealand economy. And so apropos of that, we have agreements in this free trade agreement with Malaysia that impact specifically on business flows. Let me take a couple of examples. If we just look at goods for a moment, there is an agreement in here, in this free trade agreement, that New Zealand goods will be cleared by Malaysian customs within 48 hours. Within 48 hours. Now that is hugely helpful, especially in a small country like ours, dependent on primary produce. We do not need our kiwi fruit languishing, even in refrigerated containers, in a city, a terminal, a port, a receiving area in Malaysia for any longer than they absolutely have to. So a guarantee that our goods will be cleared by Malaysian customs within 48 hours is extremely important. And in fact, Malaysia has never agreed to this before. This is new for them. But it gives New Zealand exporters a potential edge over their competitors, and that is to be welcomed. Another point in this FTA, Mr. Chair, that relates to business and making business happen more easily into the Malaysian market is around business people. So this agreement includes a recognition that people seeking to trade in goods and services and investors will be treated equally in Malaysia. There are such provisions as New Zealand business people and New Zealand business people seeking to work in Malaysia will be able to stay and visit there for up to 10 years. Now, there is no such provision as that in the ASEAN agreement, but this is something that makes it easier for New Zealand business people to get a foothold, to remain in Malaysia and to promote their business and New Zealand products into those markets in Malaysia, in the Malaysian Peninsula, for a period of time which allows for consistency and the building up of relationships that is necessary in order for that trade to happen smoothly. In addition to that, the agreement includes a provision to facilitate temporary entry for business people, facilitate those entry applications within 40 working days. So at every point, this agreement has attempted to facilitate New Zealand business and business people operating securely and with certainty into the Malaysian market. And all of those provisions are to be welcomed. We understand on this side of the House how important it is for business people not only to have access to foreign markets, but to have reliable rules and provisions that allow them to trade and work securely and with certainty, so they can plan with that there will be some kind of longevity to their enterprise in those foreign markets. And I welcome those provisions.